Welcome into the EMA Online Video Fast Break. Mason Voth, Alec Bussey here with you from EMA Online and Rivals at the Lloyd Noble Center. And I would not classify K-State's performance as noble tonight. It was not very strong for the Wildcats. Honestly, the first half, I thought it was encouraging the way that they played. I thought that they played pretty well, corrected some of the issues that they had in past games. They were tied at 36 at halftime. But after a quick back and forth early on in the second half, Oklahoma went on a run, and K-State was never able to get it closer again.
Yeah, Oklahoma goes on a 12-0 run at one point in the second half, and at that point I think the lead got up to about 10 or 12, something like that, Mason, and K-State just never had it. And I think that 12-0 run was really a good encompassing of what this game turned into for K-State. And Jerome Tang talked about it a lot in the postgame. It was a lack of effort. This team looked soft for most of the night. I know I said it too. I said it to some of our colleagues up in the press row. Tonight they look soft. They don't go to the rim hard. Cam Carter, it's just an example, jumps off 1 foot a lot, goes to the lane when trying to go for layups. Or they don't have very many guys who are walling up defensively, putting their chest into someone. They're not taking very many charges. It's something that I've kind of thought was kind of building here for this team of late, and I think it really kind of bubbled over here tonight against Oklahoma. And I think Jerome Tang really saw that and really kind of spoke to it afterwards without using the S word in basketball. He just called out their effort and said they didn't play very hard.
Yeah, well, and I think the way we saw Jerome Tang after the game is pretty telling of the way that he feels. And it wasn't one of those where he's upset about how they played, so he came in there and he was angry and he was just, yelling and ripping everything. It took a while for him to get to his media obligations after the game. So he said it wasn't necessarily the fact that he was talking to the team that long. It was more so he wanted them to have to sit there and just kind of think of what they have done. To me, it came across as, I'm not a parent yet, but I'm about to be one. And I can certainly recall how my parents would treat me when I did something wrong. And it was, you got sent to your room. And it's not necessarily about like what they have said to you at that point. It's you're going to go up there and you're supposed to think about what you've done. And I think that's what the goal was this team. After a game like this, you should know, if you've played basketball long enough, what you did wrong tonight. Oklahoma was able to be successful in a lot of areas, including the three-point success is the story of the game. K-State probably should have been up, maybe not double digits, but a decent lead in the first half, but they just weren't defending the three-point line well. And it's something that I've harped on all season long. Statistically, you could look you could look on paper and you would not have seen it, but if you use your eye test, this K-State team has not defended the three-point line very well this season. They leave guys open. Tech hit some critical threes. That's what cost them in that game. And then Oklahoma is a much better three-point shooting team, and they were hot tonight knocking them down. They were near 50% most of the game. So there were some issues there. Jerome Tang, I think after he came in and he started talking to the media, it was one of those deals where there was no use in him being over-the-top upset because I think he got to the point where he knows what's wrong. He knew what the problem was, and he was so frustrated that, you just kind of accept it a little bit quicker when you get to that point. So now it's about K-State finding a way to channel that into how they're going to play over the final stretch of the season, including, this Saturday starting at home against Iowa State, which is still a massive game because if you get that win against Iowa State, you get your 20th win of the season, you feel like things are back on track, you beat a solid Iowa State team, a team that you have not beaten yet this year. So there are things there that K-State can still do, and I think that there are positives they can take away from this game, but you're right, the defense hurt them. And the way teams took it to the rack on them was, something they've struggled with this year, defending at the rim. And I think finding a way to take more charges is probably what they need to find a way to do because we saw a lot of fouls down low tonight by K-State, and they just are unsure of how to defend down there. And if you have the faith that your team can defend a little bit better or do some things to offset the scoring inside, K-State doesn't have to try and help as much down low. And that was really what set up a lot of those threes tonight for Oklahoma was a guy like Marquise Noel having to come down to the post, and he's really not going to do anything to help you against Tanner Groves. So there's just a lot from tonight's game that can be talked about. But it's tough in the aftermath to feel positive about how this team has played the last 7 games. They're 2-5 in their last 7. They've lost 5 straight Big 12 road games, and there are a lot of other numbers that are not very positive for them right now. I think the only positive that you can have is you know what this team's potential is. It's a team that can beat all the top teams in the league, including winning at Texas, winning at Baylor, and it's a team that has Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson that, when right, are two of the best players in the Big 12. I think the problem we're seeing right now is they aren't necessarily right, and that's because teams are defending them much better. And the easiest way for teams to have a tougher time defending those guys again, they need some help. Nobody else has really helped them. They got it a little bit in the first half with Bebe and Naquan Tomlin, but then eventually that escaped them because Oklahoma learned how to defend that better. So now Marquise Noel, he needs some guys to help him up in that guard spot, and he didn't really get that tonight and hasn't for a while now.
No, and I think it's tough when teams are hard hedging him. They're essentially saying you're not going to get into the lane and be able to facilitate to your teammates like you did earlier in the season. We've seen his assist numbers kind of come down from that 8.5, 9 area that it was at earlier in the season, and it's kind of getting closer to 7.5, 8. I don't know where it's exactly at off the top of my head right now, but teams are taking away his ability to get inside, and he's 9 of his last 42, I think, from 3, and that's obviously a concern as well. And I think we're seeing some pretty sharp regression to the mean for him in that area. In his career, he's never been someone that shot upwards of 38% like he was at one point this season, and I think he's down closer to 35, 36% with the recent struggles. So he needs help in the backcourt. I just don't know where he's going to get it from, because at this point in the year, I kind of feel like we know what Desi Sills is. I feel like we kind of know what Cam Carter is as a guard as well, and I don't know where that help in the backcourt is going to come from, and I think it really does need to come from Keontae Johnson being more relied upon to handle the basketball and provide them production coming downhill and coming off ball screens and different actions to get him shots. And right now, those two players just aren't having the same success that they did when K-State started Big 12 play 4-0.
Yep, a lot to dissect for the Wildcats moving forward and a lot to think about with the way things have swiftly turned around. If, to give fairness in some respects to this team right now, they overperformed. That's probably a fair statement, the way that the season started. So they set expectations at a much higher level for themselves than what they probably should have been. But as I talked about, once you get through that first stretch of games and the way that they played, they needed to be treated like a team that was a Big 12 title contender because they had the road wins at Baylor and Texas that other teams are not going to get, because they had a win against Kansas that other teams are not going to get. And even tonight, coming here, you still had a chance to only be one game out of the Big 12 title race, and unfortunately K-State wasn't able to capitalize, so that's probably out the window now. Now the focus is on just getting things right and making sure you're in a good position come March when this team is going to be an NCAA tournament team. I think Jerome Tang, to try and motivate his team, he told them that they needed to win 2 more games to get into the tournament. This team is in this conference with the record and resume they have. They are in, but it would be much nicer to be, a 3, 4, 5 seed than slipping all the way down to an 8 seed, which is much more like what they're playing at right now. So we'll see how it goes for K-State and what's up next with Iowa State. The one silver lining is that Iowa State does struggle at times shooting the basketball from deep. Caleb Grill is really the only real threat there. They have a couple of other guys. Gabe Kalsher can get hot, but they're not as big of a threat as some other teams. Although I said that before the Texas Tech game, and Texas Tech kind of shredded them at critical moments in that game. So we'll have to see how it plays out, but a tough night for K-State in Norman. They'll get a chance to avenge this loss at home on March 1st. That'll be the final home game of the season for the Wildcats on a Wednesday night. So that'll do it for Alec and I. We'll have plenty of coverage on EMA Online the rest of the way, and then on Wednesday we'll have our full recap with the post-game podcast. And I must have choked on some of the dirt that was floating around here. The skies were not very clear and clean when we rolled into town, and it was not a very clear and clean night for the Wildcats. So look, as somebody that has become very detached at times, from I'm certainly not the fan that I was when I was younger, and I can handle losses and wins and all that much more because you do this long enough, you can kind of detach yourself from it. But this is one of those that even if you're not a fan or you're not even a K-Stater, like for you, like watching basketball like this is not enjoyable when you know what a team can achieve. And so it's tough. It's tough to stomach, and that's why for everybody that watched that, like, knowing that K-State can be better and should be better is what's tough about what happened here tonight. And it's not that I think anybody is going to take it out on K-State because they want to. It's just the frustration and emotion is going to come out from the fan base, from whoever. And I think that this team is having a tricky time dealing with that and trying to find a way to manage everything because it's great to have everybody patting you on the back when everything's going well, but when things start to turn south, you do kind of have to insulate a little bit better. And I thought Marquise Noel after the game talked about that a little bit, where he took it on himself. Hey, like, we need to be better as a team to get a little bit tighter and do some of those things. Go bowling, go to a movie, go out to eat, whatever it is. So I think this team is doing that, where I think they're going to lean on each other over the home stretch of this season, and hopefully for K-State, it ends up paying off in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's important too for fans to remember, don't tweet at the players. Don't include their Twitter handles. Don't tag them in things on Instagram. Be an adult. Be understanding that these are college kids and they read everything that you put on Twitter. So don't tag them in things. Act your age, and they don't need to see those negative things. It only makes their life harder. It only makes accomplishing their goals harder, and it only makes it harder for you as a fan to enjoy watching them, because they're only going to continue to struggle if they continue to feed off that negativity. So don't do that. But there's reason to believe that this team could potentially rebound and get back to a spot where they can be, like you said, a top 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. But obviously right now they have a lot of work to do, because they just lost to the 2 worst teams of the Big 12. And I think what's fair to say is pretty embarrassing fashion.
Yep, no, the effort just it lacked at times in key areas for K-State. One other final thing to note, keep an eye out for it this weekend. Saturday, the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee will release their top 16 for the first time this year. K-State with a win probably would have been inside that top 16 tonight. I would imagine we don't see them there, but that will be another telling idea of what the committee thinks of the Big 12, what they think of the Wildcats so far, and a lot more to break down from that. So a couple of things to take with you as K-State loses a tough one tonight in Norman. They'll be back at it on Saturday. 1 o'clock tip-off instead of 5 o'clock against Iowa State now from Bramlage Coliseum.